All right, we just watched the debate yesterday. I'm gonna make it one video, so I'm curious about his response. I mean, listen, like I said, the debate was a little bit rough. Morby, in my opinion, is more in the right. This goat moth or Timmy2Cents guy clearly has a weird narrative against Sue Klebold, and you don't have to like her. It makes perfect sense. I mean, her son is a mass shooter. I understand that, or a school shooter. But basically the biggest where this whole thing comes down to is he tried to push this narrative that she could have stopped it, and that she's a horrible abusive parent, and that she caused this whole thing, and she could have stopped everything, and she had access to all the information, blah blah blah. When she clearly didn't. She probably could have been a better parent. But he had some weird narrative against her. So let's see what he says after the debate, though, in his response.
I knew the Sue Klebold video was divisive, and people would disagree, but a content creator made a video claiming, I blatantly lied in my video.
He showed that you blatantly lied in your video.
So here are my regrets, corrections, and responses to the criticism of the Sue Klebold video. At 1 minute and 9 seconds.
I like how one of the things he said when he talked to the Morby guy was, hey, we'll do this so we don't have a series of back and forths. But now I feel like this Morby guy is just going to make another video about it.
He says that nowhere in Sue's TED Talk does she state that she couldn't have known that Dylan would turn out to be a school shooter.
Sue doesn't say any.
I believe what he actually did was he showed that you stopped early after she had
Will Suck Super Chatty
made her
$2.
point.
What are your thoughts on CM Punk returning to WWE?
I don't give a shit about CM Punk. I don't like CM Punk. He's kind of a complainer. Yeah, that you took her out of context, and if you had just continued to play what she had said, it debunks what your point was.
Anywhere in her TED Talk that she couldn't have known that Dylan would turn out to be a school shooter, nor that nobody could have known that Dylan would turn out to be a school shooter.
In 2017, we have the TED Talk, and she ends the talk with this statement.
In the end, what I know comes down to this. The tragic fact is that even the most vigilant and responsible of us may not be able to help.
Yeah, she's saying you may not be able to, even if you are super vigilant, even if you're super educated, even if you're super, everything that's going on. You may not be able to help, but you should still do your best. That doesn't communicate that nobody, nobody could have known. What?
But for love's sake.
Wait, what?
Statement.
Would turn out to be known
that Dylan would turn out to be a school shooter.
Sue doesn't say anywhere.
May not be able to help.
This guy's so dumb.
But for love's sake, we must never stop trying to know the unknowable. Thank you.
This end quote comes after another segment where she talks about how she knows that her loss can't compare to what other families lost. Here's the full clip in its context so that you can see how the TED Talk was presented.
I know that I will live with this tragedy, with these multiple tragedies, for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
I know that in the minds of many, what I lost can't compare to what the other families lost. I know my struggle doesn't make theirs any easier.
Okay.
I know there are even some who think I don't have the right to any pain, but only to a life of permanent penance.
Okay. This is all fair so far.
In the end, what I know comes down to this.
So right before the...
What's that? What does that prove? This is the fucked up part of it is yes, she lost her son who was apparently relentlessly bullied. Of course she's going to feel pain like that. And part of that pain is what did I do to cause this? Of course she's struggling with that. What is this showing us?
Id quote, she references fault, pain, and loss, and whether she should have the right to live without permanent penance.
She does.
Sue then ends the talk with the quote I used in my video about how we should try to know the unknowable. The unknowable, of course, referencing Dylan's derangement.
That's not what you showed us the quote. What she's actually... This guy is such a dishonest piece of shit. What she's saying is you may not be able to know everything. And she's making a broad statement about doing your best to try to help people and understand things, even if you don't know everything. That's all it is. This guy is a fucking idiot. He's making himself look so stupid right now.
I don't think I used this quote out of context,
Then you're dumb. Then you're too dumb to talk about things.
video, he said it came directly after a segment about mental health. And he claims I took everything out of context.
When Sue talks about the unknowable in her TED Talk, she's wrapping up a talk on depression. She's saying that you don't always know how someone is feeling and how they're thinking.
This is misleading because he's trying.
That is, I would say that's a correct interpretation. This isn't even a hot take. This guy should have never responded to this Morby guy. He should have just let it go and just moved on. This guy's an idiot.
Trying to make the audience think I took her conclusion out of context. I didn't.
I think that you're just not capable of being able to think like a human being adult. I think that's what it comes down to.
In fact, Sue has been painfully consistent with her messaging. She blames herself for being ignorant and not knowing what was going on with Dylan. But at the same time, she says it's unknowable. Sue cannot say that she takes accountability for ignorance and also at the same time claim it is impossible to know.
That's not what she claims. Okay.
Both of these statements cannot be true at the same time. It's so damn
dumb.
clever what Sue does. Here's a quote from an Oprah article that Morby uses to both prove that Sue has taken accountability and that
so far you've just dunked on yourself twice.
I am this big, big liar. I longed to talk to Dylan one last time and ask him what he'd been thinking. I spoke to him in my thoughts and prayed for understanding. I concluded that he must not have loved me because love would have prevented him from doing what he did. And though at moments I was angry with him, mostly I thought that I was the one who needed his forgiveness because I'd failed to see that he needed help. So here Sue seemingly takes accountability because she states that she needs Dylan's forgiveness because she failed to see that he needed help. And Sue later starts to waffle. She points out how no one saw that Dylan was depressed and that
I'm pretty sure she's speaking in hindsight, like after the fact. Okay. What this video doesn't do anything. This is embarrassing. This guy is grasping at straws.
There were no signs, and even if there were signs, there might not be anything anyone could have done. This seemingly is the opposite of taking accountability. And this is the same playbook she uses in her TED Talk. She seemingly takes accountability early on.
But the tragedy convinced me that I failed as a parent. And it's partially this sense of failure that brings me here today.
And then doesn't.
For years after the tragedy, I combed through memories, trying to figure out exactly where I failed as a parent.
Okay.
But there are no simple answers. I can't give you any solutions. It's that
she's saying there that she can't define a particular point of failure. She's
Bomber
not saying
super chatted $4.99.
What? She's not saying she's not a failure.
Papa, what do you think of Ryan Trout seemingly getting addicted to weed and alcohol?
My understanding is he's in a facility to help him with that, so there's really nothing to comment on there.
even the most vigilant and responsible of us may not be able to help.
Bro, he looks so dumb. All she's saying is like she can't look back at one specific point of failure, and that it's just like a very complicated, long history. She's not saying like, hey guys, here's a quick tip to make sure your kid doesn't become a school shooter. She's just saying that she's trying to comb through memories and she can't find a specific point of identification of where these things happen. And then she's right about that. What are you talking about?
Isn't accountability. And there are two kinds of people who listen to Sue. There are those of you who are being swindled. And then there's people like myself who are looking at the larger context. In the same way that you can't say that I changed my behavior and took accountability, and I think it's really important to hold people accountable for their mistakes. And in the same breath, say, hop on board the toxic gossip train, because what everyone is saying is,
dude, what is up with this guy and like weaponizing fucking Colleen Ballinger? Shut the fuck up. His entire argument centralizes around, oh, Colleen Ballinger did a bad thing. Okay, it's a virtue signal. Shut the fuck up. You're getting rolled because you don't know how to interpret basic information. This guy is either dumb or desperate or both. There's no way. You're a fucking idiot. What the fuck is happening right now with this stuff? This is insane.
Lies, and I won't take responsibility for the rumors that are wrong. If those quotes sounded familiar, it's because it's from Miranda Singh's
Why do you keep bringing her up?
infamous apology video where she does not take accountability. So if you wanted to make me look like a fool,
this
you
guy's
could scroll up in any article or rewind any clip I used in my video and declare that Sue did in fact apologize.
He already made you look like a fucking idiot in his video.
And take accountability. But she doesn't.
Super chatted $1.99. Hey Papa, first time in the stream, love your stuff.
Thanks, I appreciate it, brother.
very explicit. But the context and the overall messaging matters. Yes, you can cherry pick segments where Sue technically feels bad or has regret or is sorry.
Wait, you think that Sue was like happy that her son shot up a school? What are you talking about?
But in the same way that Miranda never takes accountability, Sue's overall messaging...
Her name isn't even Miranda. Her name is Colleen. Why are you... I think it's like so funny. It's like, come on. Her name's not even Miranda. Like, don't you think you might want to get that part right too? Her name is Colleen Ballinger.
Is that she is not responsible for Dylan. And this leads me to my biggest error in the video.
That's not what I'm hearing at all. What the fuck are you talking about, pussy? What the fuck? Oh my God.
When researching this topic, I wrote down interesting quotes and all sorts of information and attribute this quote to Sue. She says things like this in her book. The ultimate message of this book is terrifying. You may not know your own children, and worse yet, your children may be unknowable to you. The stranger you fear may be your own son or daughter. While it was from her book, it was from The Forewarned, which was written by Solomon. And I will make that correction in the video, and I stand corrected. However, I think it's important to...
I think that it's really just a virtue signal to say, like, yeah, I did get a little bit wrong, but I'm still right overall.
Note that Sue's TED Talk and other statements she's made throughout her media appearances agree with Solomon and his conclusion, almost eerily with the exact same verbiage and words. It's almost as if he's summarizing her book in the intro. Wait, that is exactly what he did. Okay. Well, yes, I misattributed this quote, but this was a mistake. It's not the same thing as intentionally lying or deceiving.
I mean, again, he showed that you intentionally cut out parts of what she had said to push a particular narrative about her. Everything you've shown us so far is her taking accountability while saying she didn't. So again, either you're too stupid to be able to parse through information correctly, or you're doing it intentionally to try to save face.
1 minute and 31 seconds. Morby says,
It should play your alert soon. Sorry, man.
There's no way for Sue to know that Dylan would have turned out to be a...
And 1 minute and 31 seconds, Morby says,
There was no way for Sue to know that Dylan would have turned out to be a school shooter, and yet Timmy just brushes over that.
There probably wasn't. I wouldn't say there was no way she could have figured it out, but it's reasonable to think that she wouldn't have been able to figure it out. I remember this guy too, this fucking Timmy2Cents guy also pushed this narrative that like Sue worked in a mental facility and like she should know better. She had a master's in like a business or something unrelated to mental health or as childhood education or something. And it's like she worked in there as an art therapy teacher. Like it's not exactly the highest level of qualification onto this.
Gin of the Depths super chatted $1.99.
This guy pushes false narrative constantly.
Hey, Pip, I'm sorry I lied. It's not my first time.
Okay, well, that's okay, buddy.
Face.
That's okay. I love you so. Mwah.
As if that suggestion is silly, even though it's the truth.
And this is just a straw man. I never claimed Sue could have known this.
What? Yes, you did. I guarantee you can fucking slice my left testicle.
PJQ super chatted $1.99. This is not the first time catching stream.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate the honesty. I could have swore that he did. He pushed this idea that she should have known because she was like because she worked in a mental hospital, but it turned out that she was like an art teacher in the mental hospital. What is he talking about? He tried to assign as much onto her as possible. He literally said that she knew, from my understanding, he pushed this idea that she knew about like the website or whatever it was that was very explicit about killing people, and then said she still did nothing about it, even though she didn't know until 6 months later, and it was the police officers and the school that knew and didn't do anything about it.
I made the case in the video that she was a bad parent, and so this is where we come...
That's not what your video is about. Dude, this guy's a fucking sleazy bitch.
...across another major contention.
That's disgusting.
Some people think Sue and parents in general have zero accountability, and some believe they have 100% accountability.
Your video tries to make it seem like she has 100% accountability. That's what your video is.
As where I'm at, I'm somewhere in the middle. In my video...
Not based on the video you pushed out there. Based on your video, she's 100% accountable. What are you talking about?
Well, I conclude that the police, the school, society, and Sue are to blame.
You say that, but you say that they are a much smaller part. In fact, the way that he says it, was something along the lines of like, yeah, these factors do exist, but ultimately it was Sue's fault. That's exactly the narrative he pushed. What the fuck is he talking about?
My academic background is in sociology, so my bias is that.
Well, you're a fucking idiot. If that's your background, clearly you failed in school. You're a dumb person. There's no way that somebody that looks at sociology in like a robust capacity would have the dumb fuck take that you had. There's just no way. Somebody with some kind of a mental health degree would have a much more or a much better understandings of external factors than you, like the bullying. This guy's a fucking liar.
We are a product of our environment, and I blame Sue for being a bad mom.
The environment isn't just your parents. It's also the school. It's also the police force. It's everything. Sure, she might be to blame, but you put as much agency onto her as you can while reducing it onto everything else around her.
Explicitly make this point clear in the video that I don't think she was an evil villain who beat her.
What are you talking about?
Her son in a basement.
No, but you make it seem like she's incredibly abusive. What are you talking about?
Nobody is claiming that Sue beat Dylan in a basement dungeon. It's just that she was a bad mom, and I'd argue that she doesn't have.
Super chatted $2. Hey Papa, it is my first 10th time in the stream.
Incredible stuff. First 10th time.
Have anything to teach us. Just a bad mom. Sue never takes accountability for being a bad mom. Never. Her theory as to why Dylan was a.
But she does. You showed us in the video that she does. You just don't know how to interpret words very well. So
deranged mass murderer is a secret hidden mental illness that nobody could have seen. I think Dylan was clearly messed up in the head, but she was
based on what? Clearly Dylan was fucked up in the head if you had access to information she didn't have access to. But she didn't have access to it. So how the fuck would you know? That's the whole argument.
Also a bad mom. These two things can be true. And even if you side with Sue and you accept her theory as true, there's nothing for her to apologize about then. She can't have accountability. She can't be responsible for the unknowable. And I believe a good parent would.
Super chatted $1.99. Good afternoon, not my last time in the stream.
Okay. Good afternoon. Bro, this
Wendigo
guy is a
super
liar.
chatted $1.99. Love you, father's stomach.
I love you too. Thank you.
Have intervened more heavily in Dylan's life after he was caught hacking into computers with Eric and committing felonies at night with Eric.
Well, he didn't hack into the computer, just to be clear. Like, what happened is one of them had access to it because they're part of some club, and they had gotten into the computer and took advantage of that power. Absolutely.
More than a year before Columbine. And I pointed out how.
And then, like, yeah, their kid, what do they do again?
And committing felonies at night with.
Yeah, they, like, broke into a car and, like, stole stuff. And then they operated that, and it was a year prior. Like, yeah, their kid was problematic. I used to beat kids up. I used to get into fights. Like, there's only so much you can really do. I mean, I'm not. What's more could she or should she have done?
Let's say super chatted $1.99. First stream today. Love you, Papa.
Good. Thank you. First stream today is fine.
With Eric more than a year before Columbine, and I pointed out how Dylan killed a girl whose parents had transferred her to Columbine after she was having behavioral problems. And I brought up the fact that
so you're saying that she should have transferred her kid to a different school, but she didn't know about it. Oh, maybe I don't. I feel like that's not a bad idea, but that doesn't mean that it is like the okay, cool. That's a good idea. She should have done that, I guess. I mean, what's the reasonable expectation of her? No?
Sue has a master's degree in education and worked at a psych hospital to make the point that Sue doesn't have an excuse to not be a good parent. Dylan's mother worked at a psychiatric hospital in the past and even had a master's degree in educational sciences.
Yeah, educational sciences, especially back then, doesn't communicate that they would be able to... doesn't communicate that she would know what the fuck she's talking about when it comes to dealing with mental health. And she worked in a psychiatric hospital as like an art teacher therapist. Like, it's not exactly the highest fucking shit. And back then, again, they didn't have very good understanding. This is when we used to institutionalize people with disabilities, removing them off the streets and taking them away from general society in some capacity, and them being very ripe with abuse, where they would be like assaulted, molested, etc., etc. So like abused, neglected. So like I'm not exactly jerking off the. That doesn't exactly convince me.
I don't think I'm holding her to this unrealistic high standard here.
You are.
When your kid is a felon and in an adolescent diversion program, so he doesn't have to go to jail and drop out of high school, you don't let him hang out with the kid who's consistently getting caught doing terrible things with him.
Sure.
When the parents of your child's best friend warn you of
that doesn't mean that she knew that he was that she knew that he was going to be a fucking school shooter.
His behavior, you do anything and everything to prevent them from hanging out. But she didn't. This is all true, but it's been pointed out that she was a teacher at a psych hospital. I never wanted to
See, he did it again. She's a teacher. She was a fucking art like therapist or whatever. She did art therapy. He's trying to make it seem like she's a teacher. She's trying to put this idea that like she taught therapy. Like that's what he's trying to say. She was a fucking art therapist teacher. She was basically just doing like an art class for them. Art therapy doesn't mean that she has this deep, robust understanding of therapy. It just means like she didn't have a therapist degree or some kind of a psychology degree. It was specifically that she would help them do art. That's it. He's trying to make it seem like she was a fucking teacher. Like this like teacher that taught psycho. That's what's indicated to me. That's how it sounds like he's trying to push this idea. Maybe I'm wrong about that interpretation, but it seems like he's desperate. He's intentionally using incorrect language here.
Imply that she was a clinician. A master's in education.
You did.
I never wanted to imply that she was a clinician.
You implied that she worked at the hospital without saying what she did because you wanted to imply that she was some kind of a therapist. Yes, you did. What are you talking about?
A master's in education isn't even the right credentials to be a clinician at a
right, and you still brought it up. You said that she worked in at the hospital, assigned without being very vague about that, and then you said that she has like an education and whatever. This was all you trying to say that she had full knowledge of all these different behavior problems.
A hospital anyway. But I think it's icing.
And even if she was a therapist and she still missed the warning signs, it's still possible. It's your own kid. You're going to have a bias towards your kid and not want to believe that they're a bad person.
On the cake that not only was she a child educator, she worked with children with mental health problems. But I wish I had included in the video that she would...
Working with kids with mental health problems doesn't mean that you have a robust understanding of mental health problems. Just to be clear, especially back then.
Was a child educator explicitly. In any case, it doesn't change anything. She didn't need to work at a psych hospital or have a master's degree in child education to be a good parent. I just think it's a slam dunk in the same way that you don't need to be a doctor to know smoking is bad. But if you are a lung doctor or a pulmonologist, you really don't have any excuses. Morby twists my words and implies...
He doesn't twist anything. This video makes him look so dumb. What are the comments saying? Oh my God. This is fucking terrible. This guy's such a dishonest piece of shit.
Is that I brought up her credentials to imply she should have been able to see Columbine coming.
You did. That's exactly the intentionality. That's exactly what you were trying to communicate to us.
But that's not what I said. And this is just another example of a straw man argument.
It's not a straw man argument. This is what you tried to do. Shut up.
He's breaking down an argument that I never made. Which brings me to another...
Chatted $1.99. Papi Chulo.
Thank you.
Correction. In another part of my video, I was establishing how troubled Sue's other son, Byron, was. In Dylan's diversion paperwork for his felony, the counselor who met with the family stated that Byron was kicked out of the house. I quoted what the counselor wrote down from her meeting with the family. I wasn't trying to mislead anyone. And while
you probably were, but this is such a small point that they got hung up on for no reason. When they were like, that's why the conversation, like the other guy was right, but the whole conversation was just like kind of harped on some irrelevant stuff.
Sue did sign the paperwork and was there at the time when the counselor met. I can't verify exactly what he said. No one can. However, I think what a diversion counselor writes has a lot of weight. I found out after the...
It's like this guy's entire video was full of inaccuracies and inconsistencies, and he picks the one aspect of it that like he has a decent footing on, where he could just say, well, I was taking the... therapist individual's word for it, and I think that is more valid than somebody else's word for it, which is fine. This is the only point in his video, This is the only point of contention that he has. So he's going to harp on it and like try to make the entire conversation about that.
Video went live that almost 20 years later, Sue denies kicking Byron out. And I wish I'd put those two facts together in a more transparent way. I don't believe Sue. I think the counselor is more trustworthy, as she wrote the facts before Columbine, and there's little reason for the counselor to lie or make up the facts. Personally, I think this is evidence that Sue is not trustworthy in her accounts of the past. Morby doesn't like an argument I made and then accuses me of lying. In the video, I brought up a quote from Dylan's dad. He says, people need to understand that this could have happened to them. And I brought up how people responded to the Klebold's as liking.
I mean, a huge part of this, again, was apparently the massive amount of bullying that her son received. I mean, if you're living in an infrastructure where your kid's being bullied, it's very possible that they could become a shooter as retaliation. It's a terrible thing.
You know, the tragedy to a natural disaster. And I said Tom is insinuating that school shooters are seemingly random. Personally, I don't believe that it's random. That's the whole point of my video. But the Klebold...
The whole point of your video is to sign as much agency onto Sue Klebold as possible, so that you can turn around and say it's all her fault, rather than like truly acknowledging the issues with the school and the police. Because you didn't really. You acknowledged it existed, but you downplayed the severity of their mistakes.
Do not believe that they created a monster. They believe Dylan was born with mental illness that caused him to do the things that he did.
That's also possible. I mean, I didn't get that anywhere from what she said, but there's also the possibility that exists. It could be a factor.
Sue even references dreams in her book where she sees wounds on Dylan and wishes she could have seen them, implying that he was born with this illness.
Dude, this guy's a fucking idiot. What the fuck are you talking about? You realize that like there could be a contributing factor that somebody has a mental illness to become a school shooter, right? Like they might have, like, this doesn't change anything.
Illness. You can pause here and read it for yourself if you don't believe me, but it's very consistent with her overall messaging that he hid everything. It was not visible to her. It was present at birth, not from the environment, out of their control.
What does any of this matter?
You may not like my argument, but it's not lying. Also, Morby doesn't like the fact that I covered what people in the media were saying about Sue's book and articles.
Well, no, it's because the way you covered it made it seem like they agreed with your point, but it turned out that they didn't. Like, there was one person where it was a woman where this guy made it seem like this woman blamed her, and then but she didn't really. So yeah, of course. I think it had something to do with you made it seem like she was like, your son's a monster and you should have seen that and all, and knowing, and with the idea that she knew of like the website and stuff when she didn't. You made it seem like that as well. And then it turned out she didn't blame her for it, or she said, yeah, she couldn't see it coming either. It was something along those lines.
She was in. Okay. I don't think this is dishonest thing to do, and I found it a bit ironic that at the end of Morby's video, he went through the comments of my video. He even started arguing with what people said as if the words were mine or had anything to do with my video.
Well, this is what people have taken away from your video. Some people have even taken away the idea that she was doing it for money. This woman is literally cashing in on her son's status as a mass murderer. That's all I need to know. The fact that not only did she refuse to take any responsibility for what happened, but also made a profit off of it, is conclusive proof that she was a dreadful mother who helped to raise a psychopath. She belongs under the prison.
Not once in the video did I ever accuse Sue of profiting off the tragedy.
I could swear you made that argument. Maybe I'm wrong.
So you're essentially holding me accountable for what some random person on the internet is saying. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, she never told Sue about that website. Yeah, and this guy made it seem like she had.
Like 16,000 comments. I'm not responsible for all the crazy theories that people come up with. And even better, you lectured me about going to commentary about Sue's media appearances in your video a few minutes prior.
You cited comment on articles instead of reading the article, and negative reviews of Sue's articles rather than telling us what's actually...
I think easily the point he's making here is that you created a dog shit video that gave people an idea of the situation that was false, but you were referencing comments after not actually reading the source material. So his point in the one hand is you're just reading comments of a source material and not the material itself and interpreting it as if the comments are correct. Whereas in his video, what he's doing is he's saying, I watched your video, they're incorrect, and then also the commenters have an incorrect idea of what happened because of your shit video. That is what he's saying. Not really the hard take to understand.
Actually, in the article.
At 12:55, Morby brings up the part of my video where Randy says Sue's overall book is a lie. This is from the year 2020. And Randy specifically references Sue Klebold's book in this passage. I read it and I was really upset. It was not the truth. There, plain and simple, it was not the truth. She makes light of the warnings that Judy gave her about Eric Harris. Judy told her that he was dangerous and to keep him away from Dylan. Judy warned her very clearly as a friend.
Right, and you had pushed this idea that Judy or that the mom, Sue, had understanding of the website when she didn't. And this girl,
LG
Judy,
super
admits
chatted
that.
$1.99.
That's the problem with your video.
Actual first time catching the stream. Hot face. Love you, Papa.
Love you too. Thank you so much.
Carl
Sue
Johnson
ignored
super
her.
chatted $1.99. Hey Papa, long time fan, first time catching stream.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. You guys are crazy.
Sue was warned and chose to ignore it. Morby then brings up a video.
Right, and you tried to make it seem like she warned her that her son about the Sun website when she didn't. I think she had just said that she thought the Sun was dangerous, but she didn't tell her why. So that's why she didn't act on anything.
Sue ignored her. Sue was warned and chose to ignore it. Morby then brings up a video from 1999 with Judy, not Randy, by the way, more than 20 years ago, where she says this.
I think, again, as we look back on this crime at the end of the year now, some people are still looking at the parents, still saying the parents should have done more. How could these kids have obtained these weapons, made these videos? The parents never would have found out. You still talk to Sue Klebold on a regular basis. What is she thinking about that?
We talk quite openly about it. She has nothing to hide. In the first place, a lot of those things didn't take place in the Klebold house that I am aware of and that she is aware of. Sue wants the answers too. I'm asking kids. I'm trying to find out any clue we can get. This part of Dylan's personality, I'm not getting anything, and we want the answers. Sue was not aware of this behavior in her child. I wouldn't be defending Sue, believe me. You have to remember that Dylan that day meant to kill both my children. I had a child in the cafeteria and Dylan knew he was in the cafeteria. I would not be defending this mom if I thought that she knew.
First off, it's the wrong person. I quoted Randy, and I quoted Randy in 2020. And in 1999, we didn't know as much as we know now. Judy isn't an authority on Columbine, and just because she disagrees with me,
well, neither is Sue Klebold,
doesn't mean I'm.
And again, you referenced her, and like you just did it before, you referenced her as she was the one saying that Dylan was dangerous. So what?
Wrong.
And Timmy in his video suggests that Judy Brown knew how evil Eric was, and that she had
Yeah, you just showed us that you thought that. What the fuck?
warned Sue.
I read this direct quote from Randy Brown in his book. Other people may disagree with Randy Brown, but this doesn't mean that I'm lying or being deceptive.
You use this as like a fact.
And then Timmy goes
He showed an interview with Randy too. Okay, yeah, there you go.
on to say this.
As we'll talk later, Randy reported Eric Harris to the police more than a year before Columbine, and he was the only one who publicly addressed the issue in advance.
You went to them and said, here's a red flag.
More than a red flag, here were 3 felonies that we had turned into them, making and detonating pipe bombs and threatening my son's life, and they didn't pursue it. They didn't do their job.
I was utterly dumbfounded that they did nothing with the web pages. Eric was saying how he was going to blow people up. Hey, I'm making pipe bombs. I've got the designs for them on my website. I'm going to kill these people. Here's why. That's a level beyond making a joke.
That's even more damning, right? Eric had this website where he wrote about how to make bombs, and he'd made a hit list and spoken about how he was going to shoot up the school. That's truly evil. How could Sue have not known what was going to happen?
This mom did not know, and this was a good, nurturing mom.
And could not have known? I mean, let's accept the fact that she didn't know, but I think still a lot of people are saying, but she should have known, even if she didn't.
You know, that is hard to believe, but I know what she knows, and I will tell you, I did not share the web pages with her in the beginning, and I've explained that that's quite complicated.
Yeah, I don't know why she wouldn't. That's the problem. I have a huge problem with that, but like, there you go. Sue didn't know, and again, this Timmy guy made it seem like she knew the whole time.
Until after the tragedy did I share the web pages with her. When I shared the web pages with her, she said, "Oh my, Eric is such an angry child." She had never known that.
And man, does this look like I'm being deceptive?
It does, because you made it seem like she knew about everything the whole time, you fucking idiot.
And this is why a lot of you are so angry. Except I never made the argument that Sue knew about the website. Or
if you didn't make the explicit argument, then you made the argument without saying it. You suggested the argument, which is what a lot of his video is full of, is suggestions of like, oh, this happened. He's trying to make it, he's effectively dog whistling information into you, and with plausible deniability language, so he can say, well, I didn't say that. Well, I didn't say. He's playing a fucking child's game.
Or the journals, or any direct evidence that Dylan was going to shoot up Columbine. If you'll notice, Morby can't clip anything from my video showing this, but he will lie and tell you that I made this argument in my video. This man is the king of straw man arguments.
This guy's just like a fucking political like weirdo. Like he's just a debate fucking, he's a debate pedophile. That's all his video is. It's just like masturbating. It's just this debate. It's debate masturbation. That's all it is.
He makes up an emotional argument that I never made and then defeats it only to pat himself on the back.
But now Timmy has built a narrative where you think, well, Judy had warned Sue about Eric, and Judy knew how evil Eric was, therefore Judy must have warned Sue about all of the evil things that Eric was getting up to.
Mr. Strawman, why don't you show me a clip where I have ever made this argument? You can't. But if someone hasn't seen my 45-minute video in 3 months, they might have fallen for your lie here. Also, Sue wrote her book almost 20 years after Columbine. In 1999, when Judy is giving this statement, Sue hadn't even written the lies that Randy is referencing. Morby should be ashamed of using this clip to discredit my statement. And much of what we know now wasn't available in 1999. Shortly after the tragedy, Judy thought Sue was a good mom in 1999. But Sue denies being close to Judy or even knowing her that well. Sue talks about Judy in her book. I looked up to see a figure coming up the driveway. It was Judy Brown, the mother of one of Dylan's childhood friends, Brooks. Alerted by the Littleton rumor mill that Dylan was involved in the events at the school, she had come to our house. I was startled to see her. Our boys had been good friends in first and second grades and then reunited in high school, but they hadn't been close. And I'd only seen Judy a few times in the years since elementary school. We chatted warmly a few weeks before at school event, but we'd never done anything together except when our boys were involved, and I wasn't sure I could manage any social niceties. Judy comes across like she knows Sue well in 1999 in the TV interview, but almost 20 years later, Sue denies this fact in her book. People
I mean, that doesn't really, none of that is contradictory. So, if anything, it explains why she didn't tell her about her son's website, because they weren't really that close, but they still could know each other, and they might have also bonded over this traumatic event. You know, if she felt guilty for not telling Sue about this website, and Sue was feeling horrible about her son shooting up a school, they might have bonded over that. It's really not like this super hot take. It's not like this complicated scenario.
Disagree. The facts are muddy. And I made
Randy
a video.
Said the book was a lie because she didn't talk about how bad the school was. Oh, right. That's true. Thank you for reminding me that. He made it seem like, I think he made it seem like she was like, oh, the book's a lie, but he was like, I didn't like how she didn't reference the school. And if anything, that makes Sue look better because she's not trying to make it seem like she's blaming the school. Right, I got you.
Giving my opinion on the situation. And showing that people disagree with me doesn't mean I'm lying. At one point, Judy said,
but I know what she knows.
First of all, that's impossible. Nobody knows everything Sue knows.
Okay, great. Oh, God, that's such a... Nobody knows everything. Shut up.
And according to Sue's book, you'd have to retract Judy's clip as evidence because Sue refutes the fact that Judy was close to Sue. You are deliberately misquoting me. I never, ever claimed anyone told Sue that Dylan was going to shoot up the school. At 1719, you are going on and on about how Sue didn't know about the website. I never said Sue knew about the website. Again, my claim is that Sue is a bad mom. This is just a strongman argument again. At 9 minutes and 15 seconds, you have qualms with my statement that Randy is the first person to threat assess a modern shooter. You say it's not true because Randy didn't really believe it would be a massacre, but Randy does believe Eric
None of these are such small things that even if Morby's wrong about are irrelevant. They're such irrelevant details. He's just trying to make it seem like these are the most relevant details. This is stupid.
Going to shoot his son. This is all semantics, in my opinion. Randy thought he was going to kill his son and other people on the hit list. Is that not a shooting at school? And Randy was so worried, he went to the police over and over. He correctly threat assessed Eric. Threat assessment is not a statement of absolute certainty. In the same way that if someone says they might be suicidal or showing like subtle signs, we assess them and we get an idea of like how much help they might need, regardless of whether we think for sure that they really will do it or not. This is such a nothing burger of a qualm. At 26 minutes and 23 seconds, you mentioned that Dylan couldn't hang out with Eric for a month after being grounded when they were caught with the break-in felony. You use this as evidence that Sue tried to separate Eric and Dylan and claim, I am being dishonest for hiding this information. Being grounded from your friends is not the same thing as not being allowed to hang out with them. I mean,
if you're, oh my God, this is so stupid. Okay, so they both did this illegal thing. I think broke into a car, like stole something from the car, like electronics or something. So you ground one of them or not be able to hang out for a while, and then after a month, like, okay, you can hang out again. Like listen, it's unfortunate. Unfortunately, people, I would say, especially boys, will do like shit, will not necessarily break into or steal stuff. But like, I was a rambunctious kid too, right? There's only so much you can really do. But if you have a kid that's acting like fucking out of pocket, we'll say, with a friend, and then you ground them from being able to hang out, and then time goes on, you're like, okay, I think maybe you guys can give it another try again, especially if these two are getting bullied by other people in the school and they're only ones that are able to actually come together, and the only ones that can relate to each other. There's probably numerous factors that would justify this, but you're trying to make it seem like she's a horrible parent for letting them hang out again.
Dylan couldn't hang out with anyone or do anything when he was grounded. It was about punishing him, not changing his environment fundamentally. You say that keeping Dylan from Eric was exactly what Sue was trying to do. This is patently false. They worked at the same pizza place and they spent pretty much every single night together for a year leading up to Columbine. If she had the ability to ground him and keep him away for an entire month, she could have changed his environment for the entire year. An example of being grounded is not proof that she tried to separate Eric from Dylan. And even worse, it's not proof that I'm being deceptive or lying or withholding information. You're just grasping for straws here. At 27 and a half minutes, Morby makes another straw man that Sue can't be held solely responsible. I've never said Sue was solely responsible.
That's the problem, is he doesn't. But he heavily implies it. He'll say, yeah, the school could have done more. The police could have done more. There was a lot of bullying. But Sue's the primary problem. That was what you were saying without saying it. And just because your video is full of you fucking dog whistling dumb bullshit doesn't mean that people can't see it. Just shut up. That's what you were trying to suggest.
She was responsible for one thing, being a bad parent. At 30:21, he points out that
No, you make it seem like she's responsible for like the whole thing. What are you talking about?
Doesn't like it when I say things like, I have a hard time believing. So Morby doesn't like it when I state my personal bias. But he spends about 40 minutes accusing me of lying and saying that he has a hard time believing I wasn't being intentionally deceptive, because fundamentally he doesn't know what my intent was with some of these mistakes. He doesn't know if it was, just an error or when I was writing the script and I misquoted something. He doesn't know that. So he has to just kind of have, state his opinion that he doesn't believe me. There's nothing wrong with stating your opinions, but I don't know why you're getting on me about it if you're going to do the exact same thing in your video. At 33 and a half minutes, Morby says Dylan only had 2 traffic tickets up until the diversion paperwork felony situation. This just isn't true. Dylan was suspended from school with Eric and some other friends for hacking into the computer system, stealing locker combinations, and trolling students in the school, leaving threatening letters and all sorts of stuff. At around close to the 34-minute mark, Morby is getting frustrated with how I pointed out that Sue changed, gained access to have access, implying.
Yeah, you were trying to. Okay. These are such dumb, small little arguments. They don't matter. This guy's a fucking idiot.
Saying that, she didn't want to imply something illicit. Eric didn't have access to the locker combinations. He hacked into the files and stole them illegally. Even Eric's dad writes illegally.
Oh my God. What she was changing, was that they didn't get access. They had already had access because they had already had access to the particular, I think it was the room. They just didn't have the authority to take access of the information that they took. And it's important because they didn't steal the access to the computer, but they did get information that they were not supposed to have. And so from a lawyer perspective, this is very important too, the lawyer would say, I want you to change this so we can remove the intention of stealing the access, because they already had the access and they abused a power that they already have. It's just lawyer speak, and it makes perfect sense. So
obtained locker combinations in Eric's diversion paperwork. In Sue's book, she flat out says he hacked the lockers. This just goes to show
she wasn't saying he didn't. What are you talking about?
Even Eric have access to the line that, she didn't want to imply something illicit.
No.
Traded with how I pointed out that Sue changed, gained access to have access, implying
because he already had access. Okay, this guy's such a disingenuous piece of shit.
Writes illegally obtained locker combinations.
She doesn't deny that he illegally obtains them. He denies of stealing the access to it. I know it's just lawyer speak. That's all it is. The lawyer would say that to try to reduce the amount of intentionality onto him, or to reduce the impact. It's one thing if you have access to something and then you access or have access to the room. I think it was the room. It's one thing if you have access to a room and then you abuse your access to that room to get information you're not supposed to have, is different from stealing access to get into the room to get that information. That's all it is.
In Eric's diversion paperwork. In Sue's book, she flat out says he hacked the lockers. This just goes to show how in the diversion paperwork, she's being wishy-washy with her language. At the 36-minute mark, really. Morby is talking about my conclusion, and he doesn't like the fact that I, blame multiple sources for fault. But I don't let Sue do the same thing. The blame for Columbine isn't this mutually exclusive thing. Sue can be responsible for being a bad parent, and it can also—
He tried to push as much responsibility onto her as possible while downplaying the responsibility of other people. That's the whole point.
Be true that multiple other factors also went wrong as well. They aren't mutually exclusive. I said Columbine was unique for many reasons. One of the reasons was that there hasn't been a shooting with two people working together since Columbine. But in 2019, the STEM high school shooting involved two shooters, and they shot multiple students, killing one. When I was looking at the databases, I removed any shooting with only one death because there are numerous gunfights at schools where someone dies, and there are hundreds of these, and I was wrong to do this because the STEM high school shooting, even though it wasn't technically a mass killing, it was a mass casualty incident where multiple students were shot, and I stand corrected. My video was divisive. I knew it would be. I'm basically pointing a finger at a mom and saying, bad mom. And you're not—
Well, you're pushing a narrative that's false. That's a problem.
Supposed to do that. Even
you can think you're allowed to think Sue Klebold's a bad mom. You're allowed to think that she's a significant part of the problem. But this person manipulates information to make it seem like she is as responsible as possible for this. So,
to a mother of a horrific killer. And a lot of people were triggered. This is why I was actually pretty surprised the video—
A lot of people were triggered. That's it, guys. He just triggered the own the libs.
Did so well, but here we are. I have never in any of my videos on any of my channels intentionally misled the audience with—
Then you're just a dumb person that shouldn't make content.
False information. I'm not going to convince everyone that bad parenting can produce poor outcomes. Everyone has their perspective on this. Being a bad parent is sort of like—
Everybody agrees with that. That could be part of the factor. That's not what you were doing.
Not wearing a seatbelt. You might not get in a car accident and everything will be fine, but you might find yourself halfway through a windshield. Okay. I went out of my way to not accuse Sue of beating Dylan in a basement or ignoring signs of a plan to shoot up the school. My problem with Sue is that she in a basement or ignoring signs of a plan to shoot up the school.
Right there. She didn't know of the plan to shoot up the school. She didn't have access to that information. He's saying it right there. Right there at this point, he is acknowledging, he's still trying to push the narrative that she knew, even though it's understood that she did not know. He's still doing it. He's still doing it, dude. This is fucking crazy. Holy shit.
My problem with Sue is that she was a bad parent, and having bad parents who didn't do a great job was essentially required for all of the pieces of the Columbine puzzle to fit together. As I said in my video, she doesn't have anything to teach us. We live in a world where parents always do the best they could have. I don't agree with that, though. I think Sue is a great example of a bad mom who was unlucky. She wasn't wearing a seatbelt when the vehicle crashed. And if you noticed, I barely mentioned Dylan's dad and Eric's parents. Why? Because they didn't go on a media campaign. They settled their lawsuit with the families of the victims and moved on with life, which is what Sue should have done.
Okay, so if you were somebody that was in sociology and you weren't like a fucking idiot, you would look and go, I think that there can be some positive, or not positive, but no, you think that there can be a positive impact to hearing about from the mother of a school shooter to see what went wrong and where it went wrong. And how can we look at that situation so that people can maybe have some more awareness? You like, absolutely, because this guy's argument is that like no parent of a school shooter could ever give us any type of warning signs. That's what he's communicating to us. But it's like, that's who we kind of need to hear from.
And as for Morby, I don't know why you had to make your video about me being deceptive and lying. You could have very easily just attempted to refute my logic and make a video showing how Sue is a victim in all of this, and I'm this mean guy for making my video. But to call me a liar is just not correct. You got so many things wrong in your video, and while it is
not really, and any small thing he might have is irrelevant to the overall point.
Your most successful video ever, just remember that if you double down and try to make a name for yourself by starting drama with other content creators, it will eventually come back around to you.
This guy's really not self-aware.
On my other channel, I called out other Tarkov gaming content creators for simping for the developer. I created a few enemies, and I realized it wasn't a smart move. I went out of my way, and I invited...
So you're saying that you've tried to clout chase off of other creators before and it didn't go well, and you're projecting that onto him? Is that what you're saying?
Them on my stream after I launched a mega viral video, The Wiggle That Killed Tarkov, and I used my popularity at the time to heal wounds.
This guy's moral masturbation. Like, he's morally masturbating right now.
I'm going to be fine. I'm confident that I have never and will never deceive people intentionally. Okay. And I have proven multiple times that I know how to make good content. I don't think you'll survive long on here if you're going to go this far out of your way to make someone look bad.
This guy's such a condescending piece of shit. All right. Well, that was something. That's all I have to say.